On the edge of a small town stood a crumbling old farmhouse, its walls covered in moss and its roof sagging under years of neglect. The air around it carried the heavy stench of damp wood and decay. No one had lived there for decades, yet for as long as anyone could remember, the townsfolk whispered the same story. Every night a tall man was seen entering through the front door. Those who had witnessed it swore he carried a rusty lantern, his steps deliberate and unnervingly steady. But when morning came, the inside of the house showed no sign of disturbance, no footprints, no shifted furniture, nothing to suggest anyone had been there at all. Terrified by this, the townsfolk declared the place cursed, and no one dared to go near it. One day, a group of 3 amateur investigators decided to uncover the truth. Carrying cameras and recording equipment, they set out to document the strange phenomenon. When they reached the front door, the rusted hinges rattled faintly, as if shivering on their own. The ground around the entrance was overgrown with weeds, untouched for years. As the door creaked open, a suffocating wave of mildew and rot spilled out, stinging their throats. Inside, the rooms were filled with scattered furniture, broken dishes on the floor, and faded photographs on the peeling walls. It looked as though the family who once lived there had fled in haste, but one detail stood out, a portrait hanging crookedly in one of the rooms. The man in the painting was identical to the figure the townsfolk claimed to see entering the house every night. The investigators decided to stay until midnight. As the hours crept by, the cold inside the house grew sharper, heavier, as if pressing down on their chests. Just past midnight, the silence broke. The floorboards groaned under the weight of slow, heavy footsteps. Cameras began to tremble in their hands, and in the recordings a faint whisper could be heard rising from the walls. Suddenly the door opened. A tall man entered carrying the same rusted lantern. His skin was pale, his eyes sunken. He didn't glance at the investigators as though they were invisible, and instead walked with purpose through the hallway. The lantern's dim light flickered across the walls, illuminating the old photographs, until he reached the room with the portrait. There he stopped. For a long moment he stood in silence, staring at his own painted likeness. Then, slowly, his figure began to dissolve, like smoke fading into the air. Only the lantern remained, clattering to the ground with a sharp, metallic echo that cut through the darkness. The next morning, the investigators were supposed to return to town, but when locals visited the house, what they found was chilling. The group's cameras and equipment were scattered by the front door, yet the investigators themselves had vanished without a trace. When the final recordings were reviewed, they showed the man's disappearance, followed by nothing but a dark hallway. Then came a piercing scream, and the footage cut to static. After that, the town's elders began to whisper a more sinister truth. The figure was not a stranger at all, but the former owner of the house, a man who had mysteriously died within its walls decades earlier. His spirit returned each night to the place he once called home. But now he was no longer alone, because anyone who entered that house became the last visitor. From that day forward, not a soul dared to pass by the house again. Yet at night, in the distance, the faint glow of a lantern could still be seen flickering behind the door. On the outskirts of town stood an abandoned mansion, its walls cracked and weathered, its roof sagging, its windows shattered into jagged shards. Just looking at it was enough to send a chill down the spine. But what terrified the townsfolk most wasn't the house itself, it was a single door inside it. That door had been sealed shut with thick wooden planks, hammered in with rusted, crooked nails. No one had dared to open it. People called it the silent grave. They whispered that something terrible had once happened behind that door. No one knew the full story, but at night, dull thuds, faint whispers, and sometimes muffled screams seemed to seep through the walls, convincing the townsfolk to stay far away. One night, a group of curious teenagers decided to uncover the truth. Armed with flashlights and cameras, they entered the decaying house. The smell of mold burned their noses, and the floorboards groaned under each step as though warning them to leave. At the end of a long hallway, they finally found it, the infamous nailed door. It looked exactly as described, boards crisscrossed and hammered deep into the frame, scratched and stained with age. When one of them touched the wood, a strange vibration shuddered through the air, as if something inside had stirred. One of the boys whispered, "This room isn't empty." Yet instead of fleeing, their curiosity consumed them. With a crowbar, they began prying the nails out one by one. With each nail pulled free, the air grew colder, heavier. It was as if the house itself was resisting, trying to keep the door sealed. Finally, with a loud crack, the door gave way. The room inside was suffocatingly still. Their flashlights barely penetrated the darkness. The space seemed empty, but a closer look revealed unsettling details. A rusted bed frame chained to the wall, piles of rotten belongings in the corners, and a broken doll lying face down on the floor. Worst of all, the walls were covered in deep claw marks, bloody grooves scraped into the plaster by desperate hands. As they stepped inside, the atmosphere grew unbearable. Whispers filled the air, followed by heavy breathing, and then, suddenly, a muffled scream. The doll rolled across the floor on its own, and with a deafening slam, the door swung shut behind them. The flashlights flickered violently, and then they saw it. A chained figure slowly sat up on the bed. Its skin was torn, its eyes hollow. Its lips moved, releasing only a hoarse whisper, "They left me here." Panic broke out. One of the teens rushed to the door, but the planks they had ripped away seemed to be back in place, as if hammered in again by unseen hands. No matter how hard they pushed, the door wouldn't budge. The chained figure began to rise, dragging its rusted shackles across the floor. Step by step, it advanced toward them, and then, one by one, the flashlights went out. The darkness swallowed their screams. By morning, the townsfolk found the teenager's car parked outside the mansion, but inside, there was no sign of them. The infamous door was sealed once more, the planks hammered deeper than before, the nails twisted firmly into place. The elders of the town shook their heads knowingly. "If the door opens," one muttered, "it always takes new souls." From that day on, no one dared to approach the mansion again. Yet on silent nights, faint hammering could still be heard echoing from inside, as if someone or something was sealing the door all over again.
I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Don't forget to like and stay tuned for more stories. See you soon.